Well, blessed Tuesday to you as we come with your daily encouragement. And we are in First Peter chapter 1, and we are getting into the flavor of what Peter is talking about in his first letter to the people of Galatia. And it is Gentile Christians. It is not Jewish Christians, but Gentiles who have adopted the stories, if not the faith of Israel. They've been grafted in to the story of faith. And so we're going to talk about how Peter uses both Old Testament language, Jewish language, that is now applied to Gentiles. And part of the shock we should have is that a lot of times people thought that the language of the Old Testament was just for people of the Old Testament. But before there was a New Testament, the only scriptures that people had were the message of the Old Testament. They needed the interpretation that Jesus was the New Testament, even as they were reading the Old. And so part of what Peter is doing is he's using language from the Old Testament, which has been used many times. And I'm going to give an example from Luther's Small Catechism to show how this is applied in many ways. But first, let's turn to 1 John 1, verses 17 and following. It says, "If you invoke as Father the one who judges all people," in other words, you're invoking as God, who now, because of Jesus declaring you a daughter and son, you can call him Father. If you invoke as Father, if we pray our Father, the one who judges all people impartially according to their deeds, in other words, we're still held by the same judgment of God, the same standard as everyone else. Live in reverent fear during the time of your, and he uses the word exile. You see, that's what we usually think of the Jewish nation, is that they're in exile. They're in exile in Babylon. Some have regarded them in exile even up to today until the establishment of the country of Israel, although many still view that they are still in exile. Some even view Israel as a false hope, but we can talk about that another time. But what is definitely in exile is all of us who claim to be believers, who claim God as our Father, and find ourselves doing the opposite of what we're called to do. People who live in exile, we are to have fear. But we are also have love. And of course, we know that from the Catechism. We are to fear and love God. You know that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your ancestors. There he's saying you were Gentiles. You had no hope in this living hope that comes from Christ. Now you have inherited nothing from them, but now you have inherited what Jesus has brought to you. And notice the words he uses here. Not with perishable things, but like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ. With the precious blood of Christ. Look at Luther as he writes in his second article, the explanation of the second article of the Apostles' Creed. It's on the work of Jesus Christ. And he says in his explanation, "I believe that Jesus Christ, true God, begotten of the Father in eternity, and also true human being, born of the Virgin Mary, is my Lord. He has redeemed me, a lost and condemned human being. He has purchased and freed me." Here we have from the words of St. Peter, "from all sins, from death, and from the power of the devil, not with gold or silver, but with his holy, precious blood, and with his innocent suffering and death. He has done this in order that I may belong to him, live under him in his kingdom, and serve him in eternal righteousness, innocence, and blessedness, just as he has risen from the dead and lives and rules eternally. This is most certainly true." You see, Jesus bought our way, not with silver or gold, so that even when we live in exile, we can be assured that we have a homecoming in him. And Luther puts it in innocence, righteousness, and blessedness. Big words that have strong impact. Innocence being the key one. If you're guilty, how can you be declared innocent? Because someone has paid the penalty for you. Someone has paid the price for you. Not with silver or gold, but with his precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without defect or blemish, Peter writes. He was destined before the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of the ages for your sake. Now, isn't that interesting? From the foundation of the world, even before the fall of Adam and Eve, God had already prepared a work with his son, Jesus Christ. I don't know if that was contingency plans based on whether Adam and Eve were obey or not, but we can say that God had this planned from the very beginning. It is the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of the ages. So think of this waiting not just as 2,000 years, if we assume Adam and Eve existing 4,000 years ago, we're talking about a really, really long time. We could even talk about billions of years, depending on your cosmology and theories of how the world was put together. But my friends, we're not talking about science per se. We're not talking about what we believe is revealed in the sedimentary story of the earth. That's for scientists to wrestle with. What we are to wrestle with is our faith in Jesus Christ. And what we're called to believe is that you confess him as Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. When the thief was on the cross in Luke's gospel, and Jesus said to him, "Today you will be with me in paradise," it wasn't because he had all of his faith questions answered or had a sure foundation in his apologetic. It was simply that he knew who Jesus was Lord, and he believed that salvation was in no one else. And my friends, even with us who have more time than someone dying on the cross next to Jesus, we too had to get one thing straight. It was his holy and precious blood that redeems us. And so if we invoke God as Father, the judge of us all, we had to invoke the price that Jesus paid for us, the price of his holy, precious blood. As Luther says, and as St. Peter says, not with silver or gold, but with his innocent blood given and shed for you. God bless you today. We trust that this will give you words of encouragement. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.